They called him the Lord of the Flies, a name that conjures images of decay, of swarming insects feasting on corruption, of something ancient and terrible lurking just beyond the edge of human understanding. But Beelzebub wasn't always a demon. His fall from grace is one of the most dramatic transformations in religious history, and his journey from God to devil reveals something unsettling about how cultures weaponize each other's beliefs. This is the story of how a deity becomes a demon, and what that tells us about the nature of evil itself. Long before Jesus walked the earth, before the temple in Jerusalem stood in its glory, the people of Canaan worshipped a god called Baal. The name simply meant Lord or Master, and Baal was many things to many people. He was the storm god, the god of fertility, the one who brought rain to parched fields and ensured the harvest. In a world where survival depended on the whims of weather and season, Baal was life itself. The Canaanites built temples in his honor. They performed rituals, made sacrifices, and called upon his name when drought threatened their communities. Archaeological evidence from ancient Ugarit shows us that Baal was part of a complex pantheon, locked in eternal struggle with Mot, the god of death. Each year, Baal would die and be reborn, symbolizing the agricultural cycle that sustained civilization. This wasn't devil worship. This was how people made sense of their world. But then came the Israelites, and with them, a radically different vision of the divine. The God of Israel was singular, jealous, and absolute. He would tolerate no rivals. When the Hebrew Bible condemns the worship of Baal, it does so with a fury that still echoes across millennia. The prophets railed against those who bowed to Baal. Kings who allowed his worship were denounced. And slowly, systematically, the Israelites began a campaign not just against the worship of Baal, but against his very nature. This is where Beelzebub enters the stage. The transformation happened through a brilliant and cutting piece of linguistic warfare. Beelzebul, which likely meant Baal the Prince, or Lord of the High Place, was twisted into Beelzebub, the Lord of the Flies. With one small change in pronunciation, a god became an insult, associated not with life-giving rain, but with filth, disease, and decomposition. The Hebrew Bible mentions Beelzebub specifically as a god of the Philistine city of Ekron. When King Ahaziah of Israel, injured from a fall, sends messengers to consult Beelzebub about whether he'll recover, the prophet Elijah intercepts them with fury. How dare the king of Israel seek guidance from a foreign god? The message is clear. Beelzebub is not just wrong to worship, but is fundamentally beneath the dignity of the Israelite God. But this mockery didn't end with the Hebrew Bible. It evolved. By the time we reach the New Testament, Beelzebub has undergone a complete metamorphosis. He's no longer merely a false god, or even an insult. He's become something far more sinister, a prince of demons. In the Gospels, when Jesus performs exorcisms and heals the possessed, the Pharisees accuse him of doing so by the power of Beelzebub, whom they call the ruler of demons. Think about what's happened here. A god who once represented the rain and the harvest, who was worshipped by farmers hoping to feed their families, has become the leader of evil spirits, second only to Satan himself in the hierarchy of hell. Jesus responds to this accusation with one of his most famous logical arguments. How can Satan cast out Satan? If a kingdom is divided against itself, it cannot stand. The very fact that Jesus uses Beelzebub and Satan almost interchangeably shows how complete the transformation had become. The early Christian writers embraced this concept. In their worldview, all pagan gods were actually demons in disguise, deceiving humanity and drawing worship away from the one true God. Beelzebub fit perfectly into this schema. His association with flies took on new, darker meanings. Flies were creatures of death and decay, carriers of disease, symbols of corruption. Medieval Christian demonology elevated Beelzebub to extraordinary heights of power. In the elaborate hierarchies that scholars constructed to map the kingdom of hell, Beelzebub was often listed as second in command to Satan himself. Some traditions made him the commander of infernal armies. Others associated him with the sin of pride, the very sin that had caused Lucifer's fall. The demon hunters and inquisitors of the Middle Ages believed Beelzebub could possess human beings, driving them to madness and sin. Accounts of exorcisms frequently name him. He appears in grimoires and books of magic as one of the most powerful entities a sorcerer might dare to summon. John Milton's Paradise Lost gives Beelzebub a prominent role. In Milton's vision, he's Satan's right hand, his closest confidant in the rebellion against heaven. He's eloquent, persuasive, and almost tragic in his loyalty. Milton's Beelzebub is no mindless monster, but a complex figure who made a choice and must live with its consequences for eternity. But let's step back and ask the uncomfortable question. What does this transformation actually tell us? How does a god become a demon? The answer reveals something profound about how humans construct ideas of good and evil. Beelzebub's journey from deity to devil wasn't about discovering some hidden truth about his nature. It was about politics, culture, and the need to delegitimize competing belief systems. The Israelites needed to distinguish themselves from their neighbors, to establish the uniqueness of their covenant with their God. The easiest way to do that was to recast their neighbors' gods as false, corrupt, and ultimately evil. This pattern has repeated throughout history. When Christianity spread through Europe, pagan gods became demons and devils. The horned gods of Celtic and Germanic tribes became images of Satan. Sacred sites became cursed places. Ancient wisdom became witchcraft. The winners write history, and they write demonology too. Today, Beelzebub remains a fixture in horror movies, novels, and popular culture. The image of the Lord of the Flies has become a universal symbol for corruption, for the breakdown of order, for the evil that lurks beneath civilization's thin veneer. William Golding borrowed the name for his famous novel, using it to represent the darkness within human nature itself. Yet few people who reference Beelzebub know his origin story. Few realize they're invoking the name of an ancient agricultural deity, transformed by theological rivalry into an icon of ultimate evil. The flies that swarm around his name aren't just symbols of rot. They're reminders of how easily the sacred becomes profane, how quickly today's god becomes tomorrow's demon. What's undeniable is that Beelzebub's legacy endures. His name still carries power, still evokes dread and fascination. Somewhere in that name is compressed thousands of years of religious conflict, cultural evolution, and the eternal human struggle to define good and evil. The Lord of the Flies buzzes through history, a reminder that the line between the divine and the demonic is thinner and more politically charged than we might like to admit. In the end, Beelzebub stands as a testament to the power of names, the mutability of meaning, and the ways that enemies become monsters in our stories. The flies still circle his name, but now we might ask, what are they really feeding on? Don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos like this.